Welcome back to Night Mind, friends. I do hope you've been adjusting well to the colder weather. It's precisely this time of year that I remember a lot of captivating online horror moments have unfolded, and I feel a bit disappointed when we go through a year without a resurgence of that particular thrill. It's a great ride, but I never feel completely satisfied after October. Thankfully, I received a tip-off on something that scratches that itch. A bit nostalgic, a bit stunning, and the right amount of horrifying. Much in the vein of Pets Cop and Catastrophe Crow, it also counts as a unique new approach in the analog horror subgenre for its methodology, combining the VHS recording format with another new millennium horror scenario you're all acquainted with. On October 5th, 2022, a video was posted to the YouTube account Alluvium by its owner. As the man is from Argentina, the video is in Spanish, but there are captions relaying the story. Alluvium has tried all morning to put his video into words, no matter what language it's in. But as he puts it, it is what it is. 2 years ago, he got a bit off track walking around in the park, ending up in a section of the forest that was considered dead. In one of those sections, there's a forest entrance, and inside he found a statuette. This statuette, to be precise, seen in the extra image he provided through a link in the description. Beneath it was a patch of recently disturbed earth, with a small red string sticking out. He tried to pull it out of curiosity, but it was stuck, clearly buried much deeper than the surface. A week later, he came back with a shovel and unearthed a metal lunchbox wrapped in string. When it opened, it was full of styrofoam, stuffed on all sides to protect its contents, a VHS tape. Alluvium took it home, and because he had his father's VCR, he decided to give it a watch. According to the captions, the vast majority of clips that came after this had way too much skipping audio, and I decided to write this last part because it was going to be a lot of subtitles anyway. When I watched the video, I found recordings of an apparently normal video game. I watched for some minutes and I found nothing too weird. I advanced the tape to various parts, thinking it could be an overwritten tape, but it wasn't. I had no idea that the game was unknown, mainly because I'm not that much into games to begin with. I felt a little disappointed, and I put the tape next to the VCR. And there it remained until recently. The topic came up in a conversation with a friend. He asked me if he could see it, and he was the one that looked for information and discovered that the game was unknown. So I asked him to help me digitize it, because frankly, I'm not the brightest one when it comes to that. I will continue to upload until I complete the entire tape, but I have to review it properly, almost frame by frame, to make sure I'm not uploading something potentially illegal for obvious reasons. You can find the link to the video in the description. The tape is there, just as promised, in the original Spanish seen within the tape, and with an upload that has English captioning. As with everything we examine in the Night Mind office, I encourage you to watch the original content first, especially in cases like this. The video is only 20 minutes 57 seconds, and you won't get the impact from it through an examination lens here that you will from a dedicated viewing. And naturally, this is as much about paying proper respect and viewership to the original creator as it is ensuring your experience is appropriately horrifying. I've put the link in the description to the English captioned upload of Valle Verde, and there's an info card occurring on this video now you can select for the same purpose. When you're done viewing, return to me here, and I can explain the hidden components, oddities, and necessary translations within. Oh, and a warning for those who require it. As far as horror video game stories go, this one actually does have some decent scares. Go ahead and clutch a pillow or turn on a light if you need a bit of bravery. Or just hang out with me here, and I'll lead you through. All set? Excellent. And by the way, if you didn't get yourself a snack or a hot drink during that pause, this is your last call to do so. Now, first things first, following the classic PlayStation startup sequence, the tape's info screen. This was recorded on February 14th, 1997, Valentine's Day. Made in Japan, the unreleased game was under investigation by two men, Robert Saturn and Pablo L. Gutierrez, reporting on malfunctioning AI, corrupted learning data, and issues regarding product specialized hardware, the TH brain, which is referenced several times in the game. While peripheral devices aren't uncommon now, they were relatively rare and expensive items in the early stages of the PlayStation era, and this definitely indicates a special peripheral device for the PS1 to go along with Valle Verde. This game also has its own AI system and learning data, which could mean exactly what you think on first glance, or might be time-appropriate definitions of AI and learning data for game developers, though it's doubtful considering what happens later. The subject reads Green Valley, which is just the name of the game. The product was developed by the Japanese company Onyxware, represented with a red O over a blue X, which seems to correlate to the color of the strings around the middle lunchbox. The text beneath it reads, "Your heart is in our hands," a heavy motto for a company. Shizuoka Institute of Science and Technology is real. That's a science and tech university in Japan. 4 languages are presented for the game, and Spanish is chosen. The intro cutscene begins and is skipped by the player recorded, with the title screen blazed through in similar fashion. We're told the player is connecting and should not unplug the TH-Brain device, restart or turn off the console. So, from the get-go, Valle Verde, Green Valley, absolutely requires the peripheral interface. How is it meant to interface with a user? That's a question we'll need to keep in mind, but TH-Brain indicates that this may be some experimental mental interface technology. The beginning visuals have been highly impressive and reminiscent of turn-of-the-century games, but nothing in the realm of horror video game storytelling has given us an animated scene as impressive, faithful, and downright professional as the beginning to Green Valley. This is breathtaking work. The animation, the character models, the menus, even the music is spot on. Watching this, it is genuinely hard to believe it wasn't real at some points. And right after a character is established, the player is treated to even more animation that just makes you believe it. It truly makes you believe it if you didn't know any better. The test player arrives at Debug Shima, Debug Island, and is told to meet Foxo in town. And just listen to the sounds as the player does this. Pay close attention to the first character to notice them here too. Did you hear that? The robot character actually made robotic sounds as it turned its head. That is such a small detail, but it's precisely the kind you would find in a professional product like this, and it really adds to the authenticity. Foxo, the apparent mayor, greets the test character, giving them credentials and explaining his armband of leadership. There's one for every tree of knowledge. He then takes the player on a brief tour, beginning with where they'll be staying, a rundown shop that the owner abandoned a while ago. Next, it's time to meet the locals. Right, so, we've seen enough video game horror to know almost immediately what's taking place here. These are previous players. They're most likely test players, actual children who were introduced to the game and are now, unlike Matthias, nowhere to be seen. Ghosts, captured souls, or a roster of victims of some paranormal force. Go ahead and place your bets now. And while it is unnerving, it's also a rather quick development, isn't it? Just 4.5 minutes into an almost 21-minute video, we're receiving heavy doses of distortion. Whatever's going on here, it's not very patient. Heavy glitching takes us back to the town center, with Foxo's big golden statue in the middle. He talks about it a bit and says the Smiling One has given him absolute authority over this area. 5 minutes in, and we have a name of something in charge that sounds less than friendly. Foxo stops speaking and read for a moment to describe the characters around town. Ito at the museum, Dr. Nito in his subterranean lab, and Isaac, his boxer robot. Foxo gives the player some money, then his box turns red again with a gear icon, telling you to remember that next election season. A very clear sign of corruption. The player is released to go explore, and immediately after turning his back on the mayor, he approaches and causes a new cutscene, plunging him into debt as the gear icon flashes below. Whether it's Tom Nook, a fox, or somebody else, you really can't ever trust the town leader, can you? We're presented with an anomaly report of spontaneous level generation on this day, leading the player into a sudden clearing in a forest filled with cake. The tester opens the map, acknowledging silently that they're confused, and heads back out. The path forward has no indication of woods ahead. This level jump is definitely spontaneous. The sounds of food and drink fill this place, and the player moves forward into the next zone, filled with statues with judgmental eyes. He doesn't linger here, taking in just a few glances before moving on to a zone filled with riches. Piles of gold, expensive art, and the sounds of a cash register. He needs to pick up a pile in order to clear the path ahead, and in the inventory, its description reads, "Stash of coins. You took it from the mayor's office, didn't you?" All of these clearings are rather mysterious, but the next is a special increase in the intensity. Did you manage to catch what that last item following the player character was? It's easy enough to know what everything else is. The blood, the babies covered in blood. But this? On close inspection, this is a pair of forceps held by a hand wrapped in a surgical glove, attempting to attack the player. We've seen cake, we've seen staring eyes, we've seen wealth, and here we see a clearing presenting a subject with the same letters as the word absorption, minus the S and P. The next clearing has a load of records, and a song is playing about a man telling another off for trying to rest while he works. The player, noticeably, also slows down to a crawl while trying to leave. The next clearing is very red. A statue with a large, angry eye overlooks many smaller statues cowering away. The audio playing is a quote from J. Robert Oppenheimer, the scientific director of the atomic bomb, describing the scene around him while witnessing the first successful detonation. The following clearing is cast in darkness, a fleshy, pulpier red ground with statues looking at themselves in mirrors. And through this area, the player finds what looks like the entrance to holy ground. 10 angel statues placed in a circle of worship before a pair of large gates. Beyond these gates, a church is found, with a massive cross statue in front of it. The player turns around, and the scene jumps to an account of another anomaly. Patient 2 unable to move, 2:15:97. So the test player is picking up the following day. Inside a cafe, a scripted interaction takes place, and the player pushes through in order to meet a character at the back. Matthias. "Are you with the agents?" he asks. "Can you hear me? Where's Chloe? What's happening?" A red text window appears, and inside it reads, "Can you see me? Can you see the bar?" "Yes," Matthias answers. "I can't move." It's easy to understand from this exchange that the red window is the test player writing. "Do you see someone else?" he asks. "Do you know where the others are?" Matthias doesn't answer this, instead saying, "What happened? I want to speak to my mom. I want to speak with Mr. Kunimuchi." "He is no longer with us," the test player says. Matthias nearly cuts him off. "I don't want to play anymore. Please get me out." The game then crashes, and a black screen persists until showing the next anomaly 2 days later. Random appearance of data. But let's review what happened for a moment. We'll get to the odd series of force clearings after the next segment, as it's actually a form of continuation. The test player is definitely one of the investigators assigned to the game, and Matthias is a child stuck inside the game, as a consciousness and as a player character. The investigator wants to know what happened to the others, those almost certainly being the other children whose homes were shown by Foxo. Matthias specifically asks about Chloe, the girl from France, who we know has disappeared along with the others. The investigator may be asking if Matthias sees anyone else because the disappearance of the kids inside the game is what provoked them to dive in. Someone leading the project in some way, Mr. Kunimochi, is no longer with them. That's either let go by the company or let go by the physical plane. So we have 4 missing kids, 1 stuck inside the game, and a possibly dead or fired project lead who helped Matthias adjust to the game. The TH Brain device is very, very likely to be a cranial interface, developed well before and above any VR technology we have today. Back to that third anomaly, the player character now enters the church seen previously. The random appearance of data cited for this is most likely the audio that plays in the scene, a recitation of an old poem, Lovely Lady Dressed in Blue, about the relationship between the Virgin Mary and Jesus. It's indicated this is being performed by the priest at the head of the church. Talking to him, he gives you a joke about his watch. He shouldn't have taught it the secrets of Joseph of Cupertino, a famous levitating priest who also received visions, because now, time flies. So, the church at the end of the sequence of clearings, it did hold what seemed like a legitimate presence and wasn't warped, so much as it was added to. What sense are we to make of the clearings that came before it then? They actually seem to correlate to one of the most commonly used themes in works judging the shortcomings of man, especially in a Christianity lens. The 7 deadly sins. There are 7 clearings and 7 sins. The cake room is gluttony. The statues with staring eyes means envy. The gold and art are greed. The baby room is lust, although it's an extremely morbid way to show that one. The records room with the song about a lazy man stands for sloth. The red room with the angry-eyed statue discussing dropping bombs is wrath. And the final room with mirrors is pride, also known on occasion as vanity. There's also a visitor here, seen during one frame of the video in the sloth room. Is this the smiling one? Probably. Could be a henchman or other figure, but we'll keep it in mind. In the next anomaly, February 18th, there's evidence of object generation and change. This is a lighter one. The Foxo statue changes position while Foxo himself has his back turned, suggesting a far more animalistic nature. The following day gives an anomaly of object generation during a plane flying delivery minigame, spawning a weird version of the Statue of Liberty. The tape quickly picks up on the next anomaly from February 21st, 1997, of spontaneous level generation. The town residents are walking single file into an alleyway, which seems to require a frame-perfect squeeze by the player to access. Ahead lies a tree, and in front of it, a portal through an arch composed of 2 rulers. One says Egalite, the other Fraternity, and on the ground is the word Liberty. This is the motto of France: equality, brotherhood, and liberty. The tester finds himself in a white void with giant statues in the mist, and one of them moves in the distance. This appears to be a wasteland, and on completing a full scan of the area, the player is faced with a circle of 6 walls. In the center lies a fallen lamb. The player stands next to it, glowing white, and then... jump scare. Turn on the console on March 22nd, 1997, a month after the date this is occurring, basically. Why would this be a request? As far as looking at the angle of the religious themes present in the game, March 30th, 1997 was Easter Sunday. That puts the 22nd within the realm of Holy Week, but still a day out of reach. March 23rd, 1997 was Palm Sunday, the start of Holy Week, the day Jesus entered Jerusalem and was celebrated by the people. It could be another religious element we're witnessing, but we'll need to see the evidence of what happened in-game on that day. As for this entire sequence, the portal bore the motto of France. The only nod we have to France is Chloe, the little girl Matthias was looking for, presumably the last to disappear. She was the last person on Matthias's mind. It's easy to see a little girl like a fallen lamb, encircled by whatever wolves are inside this place. I'm not entirely sold on the fullness of this interpretation, though. We might need to make more connections. Now, the anomaly from February 22nd, stating to read the full report. This one, I'm sure, doesn't actually need a lot of explaining. This is one of the most famous religious stories of all time. The red box with the gear appears asking the test player if he's hungry. It's a mysterious voice that directs him to a tree, where several fruits lay on the ground, and tempts him to eat. This is as transparent as can be. It's the myth of the fall of man, when the devil, as a serpent, encouraged Eve to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This goes exactly the way you expect it to go. What have you done? Look at you. You have ruined yourself. Look at what you've done, imbecile. Why are you just standing there? Take as many fruits as you can. Quick, time is running out. You'll know you'll die, right? If you are up to the neck, why don't you keep going down? Do you have something else than the consolation of this earth? Take what you can. What are you doing there losing time? You are already stained, aren't you? Go on, what difference does it make? Your destiny is sealed. All these lines in one run from the voice, now known as the accuser, followed by an ugly face in darkness. It's very transparently about the fall of man and the formation of original sin. And for those of you wondering how this setup happened in the game without an apple, that's because an apple is a modern invention of the fruit of the tree of good and evil. The actual fruit in question was never specified in the original book of Genesis. For all you know, that specific fruit only ever grew in the Garden of Eden, and you'll never taste or see a descendant of it on this earth. Following this fall of man in Green Valley, hey, perhaps another allusion to the Garden of Eden, Green Valley? The player walks out into the circle of angel statues. When they turn around, the gate to the church is closed and guarded by what looks like a biblically accurate angel. The player approaches and... yeah, that would scar some kids for life if they play this game, wouldn't it? The player arrives in what seems like a hellscape, with a statue nearby resembling a goat with long pointed horns. The character Ito, the museum keeper, is here. His speech is presented in red with the gear icon, which we can by now presume to be the influence of the force at work within the game. Strangely, there's some speech given that isn't translated, and the name indicated at the start changes from calm to Spanish for the Smile. In full it reads, "The Smile asked me to collect 10 faces for this carnival." He's then translated for, "Could you help me?" A warning box appears, indicating that auto-generated tasks can present problems and destabilize the system. If you have problems completing an auto-generated task, reboot the system and disable it through the TH-Brain menu. Notice also the large red spinning gear icon behind the warning box. Usually, the gear is associated in programs with settings or system options. It's fair to say the system of Green Valley itself has been poisoned by the Smiling One, who seems to be regarded as the devil. This entire warning might also be a trap if you consider the language. Reboot the system and disable it through the TH-Brain menu. That means you absolutely must be interfacing through the device that is most likely to cause you problems while playing this game, controlled by a devil, in order to disable it. Not an easy situation. The player accepts the task to go skin 10 people's faces for a carnival and heads out. When the environment changes, we understand more clearly what's happening. This hellscape is not another environment. It's a corruptive texture that's reskinning the existing island. Even in shadow, you can see the homes of the previously captured players in their neighborhood, leading up to Matthias's home, with the boxer robot cowering behind a tree. Studying that first hellscape area again, we can even recognize it for what it is, the town center. The statue of Foxo is the goat statue with horns. It's been replaced on its pedestal. The shapes of the buildings we've already seen are here. Their textures are just entirely corrupted. So, why is it that Matthias's house remains unscathed and the boxer robot? The player enters to the sound of an old Spanish record, with a man singing about the hour of death nearing. The player investigates some documents on a desk, a series of strange drawings. The name is a lead we can follow, and it turns up quite the result. Benjamin Solari Paravicini. We've seen evidence of his work in the game already. Here. This model is his take on the Statue of Liberty, and it comes from a vision of his about the events of September 11th. Paravicini was known as Argentina's Nostradamus and claimed that when he was a child, he communicated with fairies, angels, and other spirits. His contacts allowed him to find lost objects and even lost people. He also apparently predicted World War I in the year it was going to happen. Throughout his adult life, he made over 1,000 psychographies, psychic drawings meant to portray things to come. Interpretation of his work has led people to believe he predicted TV, satellites, and yes, September 11th. Paravicini has interesting ties to a previously mentioned figure in Green Valley, Joseph of Cupertino, who received ecstatic visions from God. Paravicini claimed that he often destroyed his drawings in fear of violation of his Catholic upbringing, and it seems he only stopped doing so when he made contact with one of his guardian angels, a deceased religious artist. Paravicini also claimed to hear voices during the crafting of his psychographies, and later in life, confided in a friend that he had once been abducted by aliens. Take that last note as you will. In Matthias's house, there's a cross over a door to the right. Inside is a bedroom with another cross and several religious paintings on the wall, including a famous painting of Jesus, Divine Mercy. And just like that, the first segment of the video ends. In the description, Alluvium writes, "I will upload the rest once I properly review it. It's like an hour long." Almost 21 minutes out of an hour-long tape. We're likely to receive 2 or 3 more parts then, which is exciting. As for what's left to consider of the material we have covered, it's very clear why Matthias's house has not been disturbed. It's been blessed by his faith. Matthias himself may be in a locked position in the game because he has some protection in this way. The robot left quaking is spared for obvious reason too. It's not human, so it can't be corrupted by the devil present within the game. Original sin does not affect a robot. This sequence is also easy to interpret. Once tainted by the theft of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, the player was kicked out of heaven, evidenced by being placed beyond the gate, and an angel was put out front to guard it. This is literally what happens in the book of Genesis. He drove out the man, and at the east of the Garden of Eden he placed the cherubim, and a sword flaming and turning to guard the way to the tree of life. So, what happened to the player who, now tainted, dared approach the cherubim? Agony. Sheer, writhing agony, followed by waking up in a corrupted world. The religious themes here extend beyond the game, by the way. The statuette that was found at the site of the buried tape is a depiction of the Virgin Mary. It almost seemed placed there in order to protect what the contents were. So, in summation, what we have here is actually really easy to put into words, which is kind of a first for a horror game story. It's an unreleased experimental video game from the PlayStation era, created by a Japanese company in partnership with Spanish employees, utilizing a peripheral interface called the TH-Brain that almost definitely is a cranial device. There's a devil inside the game going by the name The Smiling One, corrupting everything and capturing the consciousnesses of the children playtesters, except for Matthias, who appears to be a good little Catholic boy, so he is surviving. And he might also have a preoccupation with psychics doing the work of God. Or God is at work within the game to combat the devil that's corrupted it, maybe? Perhaps the TH-Brain's knack for overdoing it on imprinting consciousness brought in Matthias's fear of the devil when he was added to the game world, creating a reflective scenario that's now spun out of control. It remains to be seen exactly how this whole layout came to be, but it's not out of the question for the game to have been developed purposely as a religious product. A Spanish company could have easily written the concept, found a company in Japan to build it, and bankrolled the whole thing. There have been purely religious games crafted and targeted to kids on consoles in the early days, often for parental fears of video games potentially corrupting their children. We know what the game is, we know the situation, and we understand a good deal of the mysteries at play. What we don't know is how or why it's happening. The Paravicini angle too is pretty strange, especially packaged with Joseph of Cupertino. What is it about visions this game is pressing the player over? And another mystery, March 22nd, 1997. I imagine that in a future upload, we'll see what that's about, but it's a very specific date, isn't it? I suppose the only thing for it now is to sit and wait it out. This is a different project for sure. When the setup indicated a VHS tape held footage of a game, I was a little hesitant, because it just seemed a bit too odd of a premise to buy into, almost forced. Yet the way the story actually goes, this is much more plausible, being a recording of playtesting. The difficulty in jumping the hurdle of suspension of disbelief is in the discovery of the tape. Why would this just be buried in a park? Obviously, it was meant for discovery, but I'm hoping the logic behind this will eventually be laid out as better than being just because it's spooky. I have some faith that it will though, because the easy conclusion to draw from these circumstances is that someone on the outside needed to see what happened in this game eventually, and the competency in the creation of this project is very clear. That doesn't necessarily translate into strength of writing, but seriously, this is superior graphics and animation work. Really superior. It's actually too good for being the classic PlayStation era, I'd say. I would try to work in that this was being developed for PS2, because it's just such robust work. None of the other old, obscure game horror stories we've seen genuinely presented as games have looked this convincing and well-crafted. And again, that opening animation, the dedication to little sounds and character model details. I am thoroughly impressed by this work. I will never stop singing the praises of the graphics on this one. Especially that animation. That is above and beyond the Call of Duty. Excellent work to whoever put that together. Now, besides the concern behind the discovery of the tape, I've only got 2 issues that I want to bring up. The scares within this project are actually effective, even if they are jump scares. Jump scares need a build-up to be justified, and they need to be a legitimate threat, so both of the hard jump scares are earned. Good on those points. The speed at which we got into the scary stuff though, and how sudden it was, I am not a fan of. The build-up simply didn't exist for the neighborhood tour, and if it had been handled more softly and in an eerie manner that let you know something was wrong, then gave us Matthias' sequence, it would have eased us into the rising terror. That's how to prime your audience right for getting the scares going. You need to work them up before you whip out the loud noises and distortions. Priming, priming, priming. Priming is your path to good scares. My other issue is in line with the speed at which the scares begin. A lot of the writing here is happening a bit too fast and a little too clearly. For the first installment of a project, I was able to discern what's going on far too quickly. That's never a call for a creator to purposely become obscure, and I advise no one to do that, but the transparency of what's occurring here made it a rather open and shut case outside of what we absolutely need more episodes for. We have reasons to hang on, besides pure curiosity, and that is good. Religious themes are usually very, very easy to catch though. These are some of the most overtold and easily applied tales in the Western world, and very, very quickly identified in any form of fiction. Stretching them out makes it easier to work with. The Catholicism angle was laid on pretty thickly in just part 1 though. Green Valley is still a fantastic creation, and I'm certainly going to be hanging on for the rest of the hour that's on the tape. The creator is clearly skilled, and we have plenty of time to see them surprise us, and what exactly March 22nd, 1997 is about. And in case you're wondering on my behalf, yes, this one did indeed hit that sweet November craving for something horrifying and mysterious online, and I'm quite thankful for it. Be sure to subscribe to Illuvium so you can catch the next uploads, as I have. There's no telling when the next part will appear, but I'm eagerly awaiting its release. Thanks to Illuvium for making Valle Verde, and anyone who assisted in its creation. Thanks to all of you for watching, and thanks to my supporters on Patreon, who willingly plug their consciousness into this demon's world. If you'd like to support Nightmind, you can do so for as little as just $2 a month, which gets your name in the credits of all major videos and allows you into the Patreon community with our Discord. This also supports the Nightmind Index for new and emerging non-fiction projects. And if you can't do Patreon, you might have noticed the new thanks button below my videos. You can donate a personal thanks to me directly this way, and your comment will show up with a special tag. So, if you enjoy what I do or particularly enjoy this episode and want to say thanks that way, you can do so. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks for joining me in the dark again this evening. Once more, I'm Nick Nocturne, and I'll be seeing you again real soon. Beware of anomalies as you're going about town, and until next time, sleep tight.